The other hot topic at the moment that, it's kind of a surreal universe in a sense. There's a lot of discussion about the pays, and yet on the other hand, no one's saying anything, which has a particular context, of course, in the legal agreements that everyone signs.
No, I mean, we're all under those same constraints. We're all interested in mobile, Australia in particular, because the contactless infrastructure here is ripe for this sort of thing. But I would say, if you look at my sort of contactless microcosm, which is Transport for London, the biggest contactless merchant in the UK, even now, and we've had Apple Pay, for example, for some time. It's a tiny proportion of. I mean, I can't remember the exact figure, but I think 3% of contactless payments on the tubes and buses are actually Apple Pay. The media very focused on Apple and all the new iPhones and that kind of thing, but out in the marketplace, it's not as exciting. And I think basically tapping your phone to buy something is not that interesting compared to tapping a card to buy something. I mean, it works pretty well. I mean, there's an advantage. You can take the phone, you don't have to take the cards, but you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't transform.
It's not life-changing.
No, it's not. But I think you're going to see a big change coming, because the thing that's interesting to me about Apple Pay, Android Pay, isn't the tapping. It's in-app. Yes. It's online. It's taking that chip and pin security and bringing it into the places where there's terrible security at the moment. And I think that is kind of transformational. If you can just click around on an app to buy whatever it is you're buying, cups of coffee or train tickets, or it doesn't matter, and you just put your thumb on or swipe your finger and go, actually that is quite transformational, I think. So yeah, so the tapping, it's interesting, not going to change the world. But when you can do chip and pin in your browser, well, that's a pretty fantastic change.
That's got benefits for everybody, because more volume for issuers, less lost sales for merchants through having to kind of key in a 16-digit PAN into a tiny little screen with fat fingers. I think reduce fraud rates. I
mean, I was just looking at some figures this morning from the US, where some of the early adopters for the Apple Pay in-app, they're talking about double, the rate. So quite often people would just, as soon as they saw you've got to type in your card number or whatever, they would just give up. And because of the fraud that you get, the merchants don't just suffer the cost of the fraud, there's also the cost of putting things right and managing it and all that kind of stuff. So taking fraud out of that environment is a really big deal. The payment mechanisms that we have now, whether I'm sticking a card in and punching a pin or tapping the card or tapping my phone, those are payment mechanisms that come from another age, right? If we're moving into a more identity, reputation-centric world, what use is it to the retailer if they find out who you are as you're leaving? You know what I mean? So the fact that they don't find out who you are until you get to POS, and that's not right. We need to shift that identification and associated authentication from the checkout to a check-in. I mean, the retailer wants to know who you are when you walk in through the door. And that's what apps can do. That's what cards can't do.
Banks would say the same thing about their mobile banking apps. That if I want a mobile banking app that is the best for my customers, then I want to design and deliver that mobile banking app end to end as well. So how do those two things fit together?
Look, I think if the thinking is right about this kind of API-centric, Amazonized world, then there are two issues with that vision that immediately come up. One is, why is the bank making the mobile banking app? If I've got two bank accounts or I change banks, I might want to carry on. I have a great app which helps me manage my money. Why should I change that app if I change bank accounts? Or, you know what I mean? Like, the bank account should be plugging into the apps. It's not obvious that a bank's core competency and resources should go into making mobile apps. The other thing I think about that is that if you have a situation where the bank has some idea that its competitive advantage in the future relies on locking people into some app that it's building, that seems not to learn lessons from history. When I walk into Coles, I want to use the Coles app, and I want my bank payments to fit in with that. I go into Coles, they've got Bluetooth and all these sort of things. The app pops up, they know who I am, they know where I am, we can do all the loyalty coupons, blah, blah. The scanner pops up, I go around and do my shopping, and I just put my thumb on and walk out. Well, that's a fantastic experience. Why is the bank going to get involved in that loop?